Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Sakayana Purnanavasya Vandegurashi Charanarvindam Praptasakayana Vandegurashi Vandegurashi Charanarvindam Vande Gurashi Charanarvindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Padikramadhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Romanchakam Pastru Taranga Bhajo Vande Gurashi Charanarvindam Romanchakam Taranga Bhajo Vande Gurashi Shri Vigrara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramajanado Shri Vigrara Dana Nityanana Jokta Sabaktam Sa Niyunjatopi Vande Gurashi Charanarvindam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasado Svatvanathruptam Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidashi Bhagavat Prasado Svatvanathruptam Hari Bhakta Sangam Kritvaiva Trupti Bhajato Shadeva Vande Gurashi Charanarvindam Shradikama Davayara Para Madhurya Leela Gunarupanamna Shri Radhika Pratikshana Swa Dhanalolupasya Vande Gurashi Charanarvindam Nikunjayono Ratikeli Siddhai Jajali Vir Jukti apekshaniya nikunda juno siddhai tatra tidakya ativalabhasya vande guru shri charanara vrindam Sakshar Haridvena Samasta Shashri Ruktas Tathava Yataeva Sadavi Sakya Haridvena Samasta Shashri Ruktas Tathava Into Prabhaja Priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Yasya Prasada Bhagavar Prasada Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi Yasya prasadam bhagavat prasadam Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi Jayam stubham tasya Yasatvi Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vindam Dayam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunavadi Pachatarisha Tarine Namaste Saraswati Shonavadi Patatadishata Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Tanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Tanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hariye Namah Krishna Jadavaye Namah Jadavaye Madhavaye Krishavaye Namah Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Bo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Shri Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadrama Jaya Sudarshan Chakra Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Sitaram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur, Haribo. Jai Vishnupada Paramahansa Prabhupada Suttara Sarasi Srimad His Divine Grace Abhacharvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Pratishta Vividi Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Siramani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai श्री गौरी गुरुवर गापतित उद्धार की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भद्र गुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्ट दास गुण सदगोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नामाचार्य शील हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय। अनंत कुछ वैष्णवृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार शिव सारी गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिनंदन श्रीमान गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मावरनाय अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहत निदांग ट्रांसडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ राधा कुंज श्याम कुंज गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय। दिलोशिव श्री राधा नील माधव की जय। श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु स्मृत देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशनकारी श्रृंगरे भगवान की जय। सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय। जगंगा माई जमुना माई की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंदी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा धारानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौर हरि प्रेमानंद हरि बोल। All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Dalada lada dayine.
Dalada lada dayine.
Niranya Kashipur Vakshaha.
Niranya
Shiladankana Kalaye.
Shiladankana Kalaye.
Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimo.
Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimo.
Yeto yeto yami tato Narsimha.
Jato jato jami tato Narsimha.
Bahir Narsimho, Hridaye Narsimho.
Bahir Narsimho, Hridaye Narsimho.
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Papade.
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Papade.
Tavakara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare.
Abakara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Kesavadrita Narari Rupa. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare.
Kesha Avadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Jaya Kesavadrita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha
Jai Narasimhadev Jaya Narasimhadev Jaya Narasimhadev Jaya Narasimhadev
Jaya Narasimhadev Narasimhadev Jaya Narasimhadev Jaya Narasimhadev
Jayo Prahlad Maharaj Jayo Prahlad Maharaj Jayo Prahlad Maharaj Jayo Prahlad Maharaj
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev
Jai Jai Gurudev 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 Jai Jai Gurudev Shri Bhakti Pada Sarvigna Vinashana Krishna Kare Bhagavan ki jai Bhakta Shrestha Prahlad Maharaj ki jai Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai Krishna Dasita Ayen Jani Kanisha Papane Pramatari Kanisha Tane Tane Panna Santi Padachina Pade Pade Jani Kanisha Papane Jani Kanisha Papane Pramatari Kanisha Tane Tane Panna Santi Padachina Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Tusima, Tusmarani, Tusmarani, Jaya Tusmarani, Jaya Tusmarani, Tusmarani, Jaya Tusmarani, Jaya Vrinda, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda. Nittai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nittai Gaura Haribo. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Gurudev, 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 Jai Jai Gurudev. Jai, Jai. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha. Vrindaye tulasi devai Priyaye ke sabha satya Vishnu bhakti pradi devi Satavataye Namaha. Srimati Tulsi Maharani Vrindadevi ki jai. O Tulsi, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavana. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays. May I always fame and love Shri Shri Radha and Govinda. Srimati Tulsi Maharani Vrindadevi ki jai. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna ki jai. Namo Mahavaranayi Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishna Chaitanya Namine Guru Krishna. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large. God is praised the rays of the benediction moment. It is the light of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested your transcendental energies. There is not even hard and fast rule for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names. But I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind. Think you oneself alone and stroll in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of all prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, somehow or other I am falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs on my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling the separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so. Even if sunders me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, but he's always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Shri Stakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blasphemy the Lord is to dedicate a life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, the Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, equal to independent from the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To display the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures of the sons of Vedic literature. 5. To consider the Lord Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities and strength chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the fatherless person by the Lord's holy name. Enter. Do not have complete faith in chanting holy names, in the material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas devoted to the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of the one, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls.
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namo.
Yatam Vayarita Ratacha Tirsvadiga Swara Dine Brahma Udaya Atika Vaye Mujam Chita Suraya Tejo Varim Nidam Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisagamisya
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O all-pervading personality of Godhead,
O all-pervading personality of Godhead,
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth,
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth,
and the primeval cause of all causes.
and the primeval cause of all causes,
The creation, destruction, creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all
He is
manifestations.
directly and directly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond
It
him.
is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of the Magi,
the original living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him even the best sages and demigods are placed into
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations
as one is bewildered by the illusory representation
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of waters and fire, land, sea, and water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universe,
temporarily manifested by the reaction to the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
are therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental
which is forever free from the illusory representations in the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of
I
material.
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
Dharma projita kaitravatra,
Dharma projita kaitavatra,
paramo nirmatsaranam satam,
paramo nimashranam satam,
vedyam vastavam atra vastu,
vedyam vastavam vastavam,
shivadam tapa trayon muladam.
shivadam taputrayom,
Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite,
Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni,
Kim va parir Ishwaraha,
Kimva Kavirishvara,
Sadyo Hridi Avaridyatetra,
Sadhyurudya Varudyatitra,
Kriti Bihi Sususubhistakshanat.
Prithvi Shushushvishtakhyanat,
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are material.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the high truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The high truth, the reality is distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold misery.
This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity,
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
is sufficient itself for God's realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture,
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam,
Nigama kapator garitam phalam,
sukhamukat amrita dravya samyatam,
sukhamukat amrita dravya
pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamaya,
muhur ahur raska bhuvi bhavakaha.
Mura Purasika,
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Bhagavatam,
the mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literatures,
the mature fruit, the desired fruit, Vedic literature,
it emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
emanating from the lips of Sri Shukadev.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
because nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Sinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shramvatam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Shravana Kirti,
Hirdiyam Taksto Hiya Badrani,
Vidyantasto Hiyapara,
Vidunati Suhit Satam.
Vidu Noti Surit Satam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly,
is itself righteous activity.
is self-righteous act.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
For one who hears about
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna was dwelling in every heart,
acts as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purify the voice who constantly engaged in hearing of him.
Nastapresu abhadresu
Nastapreshva Bhavesh,
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva,
bhagavati uttamasloke
Bhagavati Kamasloke,
bhakti bhavati naistaki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, he goes naturally develop his dormant transcendental.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna,
and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Darajastamo Bhava,
kamaloba dayaschaye
Amanobhadayascha,
cheta eta ranavidam stitvam sattve prasidati. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogitaha Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate Hridaya Grantis Siddhyante Sarvasamsaya Siyante Chasya Karmani Drista Evatmanishware. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of samsayam samagram, understanding the Supreme Absolute Truth, Personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text number 3. Ata Kavir Nama Suyavadartha Shad Apramato Vyavasaya Buddhi Siddhe Natate Nayatate Nayatata Tatra Parishramata Tatra Samiksamana. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. For this reason, the enlightened person should endeavor only for the minimum necessities of life while in the world of names. He should be intelligently fixed and never endeavor for unwanted things, being competent to perceive practically that all such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Bhagavata Dharma, or the cult of Srimad Bhagavatam, is perfectly distinct from the way of fruitive activities, which are considered by the devotees to be merely a waste of time. The whole universe, or for that matter, all material existence, is moving on as Jagat, simply for planning business to make one's position very comfortable or secure, although everyone sees that this existence is neither comfortable nor secure and can never become comfortable or secure at any stage of development. Those who are captivated by the illusory advancement of material civilization, following the way of phantasmagoria, are certainly madmen. The whole material creation is a jugglery of names only. In fact, it is nothing but a bewildering creation of matter like earth, water, and fire. The buildings, furniture, cars, bungalows, mills, factories, and industries, peace, war, or even the highest perfection of material science, namely atomic energy and electronics, are all simply bewildering names of material elements with their concomitant reactions of the three modes. Since the devotee of the Lord knows them perfectly well, he is not interested in creating unwanted things for a situation which is not at all reality, but simply names of no more significance than the babble of sea waves. The great kings, leaders, and soldiers fight with one another in order to perpetuate their names in history. They are forgotten in due course of time, and they make a place for another era in history. They are forgotten in due course of time and make a place for another era in history. But the devotee realizes how much history and historical persons are useless products of flickering time. The fruitive worker aspires after a big fortune in the matter of wealth, women, and worldly adoration. But those who are fixed in perfect reality are not at all interested in such false things. For them, it is all a waste of time, since every second of human life is important. An enlightened man should be very careful to utilize time very cautiously. 1 second of human life wasted in the vain research of planning for happiness in the material world can never be replaced, even if one spends millions of coins of gold. Therefore, the transcendentalist, desiring freedom from the clutches of Maya, or the illusory activities of life, is warned herewith not to be captivated by the external features of fruitive actors. Human life is never meant for sense gratification, but for self-realization. Srimad Bhagavatam instructs us solely on this subject from the very beginning to the end. Human life is simply meant for self-realization. The civilization which aims at this ultimate at this utmost perfection never indulges in creating unwanted things. And such a perfect civilization prepares men only to accept the bare necessities of life or to follow the principle of the best use of a bad bargain. Our material bodies and our lives in that connection are bad bargains because the living entity is actually spirit, and spiritual advancement of the living entity is absolutely necessary. Human life is intended for the realization of this important factor, and one should act accordingly, accepting only the bare necessities of life and depending more on God's gift, without diversion of human energy for any other purpose, such as being mad for material enjoyment. The materialistic advancement of civilization is called the civilization of the demons, which ultimately ends in wars and scarcity. The transcendentalist is specifically warned herewith to be fixed in mind, so that even if there is difficulty in the plain living and high thinking, he will not indulge even an inch, or he will not budge even an inch from his stark determination. For a transcendentalist, it is a pseudocidal policy to be intimately in touch with the sense gratifiers of the world, because such a policy will frustrate the ultimate gain of life. Sukadeva Goswami met Maharaj Parikshit when the latter felt a necessity for such a meeting. It is the duty of a transcendentalist to help persons who desire real salvation and to support the cause of salvation. One might note that Sukadeva Goswami never met Maharaj Parikshit while he was ruling as a great king. For a transcendentalist, the mode of activities is explained in the next sloka. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So it says, for this reason. What reason is that? That is, that the Vedic sounds are so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of people to meaningless things like the heavenly kingdoms. The conditioned souls, however, hover in dreams of such heavenly illusory pleasures, but actually they do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. So this should be read to all the Muslim jihadis who are dreaming of 70 virgins in Jannat, the Muslim heaven, that they're promised. And in order to get that, you have to strap a bomb around your body and go blow yourself up into 1,000 pieces. And you'll get 70 virgins in Jannat. That, of course, is complete nonsense. But what's the difference between the promise of 70 virgins in Jannat or the promise of the heavenly gardens with rivers of wine and beautiful apsaris dancing for you which is in the Hindu scriptures. See, actually, there's very little difference between the nonsense Muslims and the nonsense Hindus. They're both thinking in the same way of getting some material benefit by doing some kind of self-interested ritual or blowing oneself up. So there's no difference. It's the same thing. The ultimate end is sense gratification. But that's not Krishna consciousness. So it says, for this reason, that the Vedic sounds and rituals and mantras, not all of them, but many of them in the Karma, or all of them in the Karma Kanda section, are so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of people to meaningless things like the heavenly kingdoms. And the conditioned souls hover in dreams of such heavenly illusory pleasures, but actually they do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. So therefore, enlightened persons should endeavor only for the minimum necessities of life while in the world of names. So let's talk about this. Minimum necessities of life. As soon as you hear that, people get, oh my God, I got to be careful about this Krishna consciousness. If I join them, I'll have to live like Gandhi, half naked, walking around with the bed sheet on, and no socks, and some kind of a wooden chappal in the middle of winter. That's not what it means. Of course, Gandhi, he was a fake renunciate. There are many pictures of Gandhi with his arms around two women walking. Have you ever seen those pictures? Yeah. So that's a fake renunciate. A real sadhu doesn't put his arms around women. Right? He's kind to women. Prabhupada was very kind to all the women in ISKCON, and very accommodating and very merciful. But he didn't put his arms around any of the women, right? And Gandhi was even sleeping with women. See? And his claim is, well, I was just proving that I'm not attached to sex. So this is all nonsense. He dressed like a yogi, but he wasn't a yogi. And he didn't look like a politician, but he was acting as a politician. So you see, both ways he was a phony, and because of that, his whole thing failed. India did not become decentralized and return back to an agrarian economy. India became industrialized to an extreme point, and people gave up the charkha, and they took up they gave up the charkha and the ambassador, and they took up Mercedes and the BMWs, and now maybe Teslas also, and big factories. So his whole strategy failed. Why? Because he wasn't a sadhu, not a real sadhu, and he wasn't really a politician. He was some type of fake person who pretended to be these things, and the whole thing failed. So, and Prabhupada wrote him a letter. He said, okay, now you succeeded, the British left India. Now, let's join together and preach Bhagavad Gita throughout the world. He didn't even answer Prabhupada's letter. He was so involved in politics and trying to make his satyagraha successful, nonviolence. Well, it failed, and it caused the death of 1 million people. So, what does it mean that endeavor only for the minimum necessities of life? Well, that means if you earn $1 million in one day, that doesn't change what your stomach can hold. your stomach can only hold maybe 3 or 4 rotis, and some sabji, and some dal, and some dahi, and that's about it. It's not going to help you because you made $1 million to make 1,000 rotis. You're not going to be able to eat 1,000 rotis. And if you even try to eat more than 4, 5, 6 roti, you'll just get upset stomach. So it doesn't matter if you're making $1 million a day, as long as you're spending the $1 million a day for the service of Krishna. But your lifestyle has not changed. You still eat your 2 rotis and your little bit of sabji and dal and so forth. So this was the example of Sudama Vipra Brahmana. His wife forced him to go see Krishna, who was his classmate in the school of Sandipani Muni, in the Gurukul of Sandipani Muni. And he said, go and see him. He's a rich guy in Dwarka, and go beg from him, and he'll give you so much money, because we're living in poverty here. I'm sick and tired of this poverty, wearing old clothes and eating frugally and living in a little hut. I want some nice clothes. So his wife was forcing him. And she said, here, take this, you know. And she gave him some chipped rice and said, give this to him. That'll be your dakshin. So, I mean, he listened to his wife. He's a brahmana. But he was very hesitant. And he sort of tied up that little bit of chipped rice, which is lowest grade of rice, in his dhoti. And he goes to see Krishna. And it takes a long time to get there. And because he has to walk from, I think it's somewhere in South India, all the way to Dwarka. And when he meets Krishna, Krishna honors him. He and Rukmini bow down to him. They do arti to him. They wash his feet. And then after all that, they give him a nice plate. They make him sit down on their bed, and they sit at his feet. They put the water on their head from his foot wash. And then they give him some nice prasadam. And then when Krishna starts talking to him, he says, so why did you come? And he tries to deflect the answer. He doesn't really say much. And Krishna said, what's that you have tied to your dhoti? He said, oh, that's nothing. So Krishna grabs it and opens it up and said, oh, you brought me some mahaprasadam. He said, no, don't eat that. That's raw. He said, no. And he eats some of it. And he said, this is the best prasadam I've ever had. And then Rukmini, when she sees this, she gets really, bewildered. She grabs the rest of the chipped rice so he doesn't eat any more of it. And so Krishna finds out why he came. So he blesses him. And so, but Sudama Vipra Brahmana is overwhelmed by the welcome and the treatment that Krishna gives him, and his kindness and his mercy. He forgets to even really tell him why he came. But Krishna knows. He doesn't really find out. He's not even really interested. He knows why he's come. And so when Sudama Vipra gets back to his home, and on the way he's doing kirtan in all the different little towns and villages. And when he gets back there, he doesn't see his village anymore. He sees these palaces. And when he gets there, there's some lady up on a balcony of one of the palaces, waving at him and smiling. It doesn't look like his wife because it looks like a young lady. And then when he finally meets that lady, it's his wife, but she's been rejuvenated and she has really opulent clothes and she's living in this palace. And then Sudama Vipra realizes, that Krishna did this. So he's happy for his wife. She got what she wanted. And the whole village is transformed, into palaces, and everyone's living opulently. But he didn't change his style of living. He still lived like a I wouldn't say poor Brahmana, but a very, very modest Brahmana. He didn't partake of any of the opulence that Krishna lavished on his wife and his children and the neighbors in the village. So that's what it means by minimum necessities of life. You might be able to gain $1 million a day every day of your life, but it doesn't change your lifestyle of remaining very, very, let's say, humble and very, very simple in all your habits and very strictly maintaining strict sadhana. So he should be intelligently fixed and never endeavor for unwanted things, being competent to perceive practically that all such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. Yeah. This is one poem by, I think it was Coleridge again, and the name of the poem is Ozymandias. So, in this poem, this Englishman is doing some research work in Egypt, and he's in a desert somewhere in Egypt, and he comes across this tribute to a great ancient king called Ozymandias. But the tribute to him is sort of like a broken down monument, and it's in the middle of a desert, middle of nowhere. And it says, Ozymandias was the greatest king of the earth. And he had so many cows and so many chariots and so many soldiers, and everyone trembled just hearing the name of Ozymandias. But what's there to remember him? It's a virtually a abandoned shrine in the middle of nowhere, and that also is broken. So that's why Prabhupada is saying that practically all such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. Well, any time people work for sense gratification, the end result is nothing. Just some kind of a hazy memory, but nothing tangible, because it's all subject to birth, death, old age, and disease. And Prabhupada uses very interesting language in this purport. He talks about the world of names. What does that mean? That means that names are not the same as the thing itself. So, just like Coca-Cola, you could say Coca-Cola all day long, and you would not taste Coca-Cola, because the name is different than the thing. Whereas if you chant Hare Krishna all day long, you actually begin to feel the presence of Krishna, because the name Krishna and Krishna the person are non-different. But Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Mecca-Cola, this cola, that cola, you can chant all day long, you're not going to get the taste. In fact, you get bored. So that's what it means by world of names. And then he talks about the jugglery of names. He says the whole material creation is a jugglery of names only. In fact, it is nothing but a bewildering creation of matter like earth, water, and fire. The buildings, furniture, cars, bungalows, mills, factories, industries, peace, war, or even the highest perfection of material science, namely atomic energy and electronics, are all simply bewildering names of material elements with their concomitant reactions of the three modes. That's a correct description of this material world. And someone who reads this, who's a sense gratifier, they become horrified. So what? He's completely making fun and belittling everything I'm attached to. Right? And then it's not only that, then Prabhupada starts talking about society, friendship, and love, family, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, relatives, All these things are bewildering, and they're all part of this world of names and jugglery of names. Just like you have so many names, like, the name of your, in Hindi, you have all these different names, like your brother's sister. How do you say that in Hindi? Huh? I mean, I'm sorry, your brother's wife. Okay. Your uncle. Okay. Your uncle's son. Huh? Yeah, see, you have all these names, right? We can go down a long list. There's special names for all these extended family members, okay, and direct family members. So, but it's just names, right? Because one by one they die. Let's say you live longer and you see them, you go to the funeral of each one of them, right? And afterwards, what's remaining is just the name, not the person, right? Or maybe, and then of course you cremate the people, so there's nothing. I mean, at least the Christians or the Jews and the Muslims, they have cemeteries. So once a year or once every 5 years, you go to the cemetery, and you see the name on the stone monument. But it's just a name. That's all it is. It's nothing more than that. So, therefore, Prabhupada says, since the devotee of the Lord knows them perfectly, well, he's not interested in creating unwanted things for a situation which is not at all reality, but simply names of no more significance than the babble of sea waves. The babble of sea waves. If you go on the ocean on a day where there's a lot of wind, so you hear, it's called the babble of sea waves. And Prabhupada says, all these names is not more than the babble of sea waves. So, yeah, one time I was talking to my mother, and I told her, Mom, I said, you want me to take you back to the old country, see where you were born? And she thought about it for a second and said, no, I don't want to go. I said, really? You don't want to go back there? She said, why should I? I said, everybody's dead. And it would just bring back memories, bad memories. I don't want to go. See, she didn't want to go because there was nothing there left. Nothing was left. See, just a bunch of names, right? And even those names are forgotten. So, it says, but simply names of no more significance than the babble of sea waves. The great kings, leaders, and soldiers fight with one another in order to perpetuate their names in history, just like Ozymandias, he was a great name in history, but everyone forgot about him. And his great monument is all broken down in the middle of nowhere. They are forgotten in due course of time, and they make a place for another era in history. In other words, they'll probably come back and repeat the same nonsense another time and die and then take birth again and do the same thing. But the devotee realizes how much history and historical persons are useless products of flickering time. You know how much time they waste in schools teaching history? The Civil War, the Revolutionary War, the Mexican War, the Korean War, the World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, this war, that, the Iraq War, the war against ISIS, the war against Al-Qaeda, the war, this war, that war. It's just as it says, but the devotee realizes how much history and historical persons are useless products of flickering time. The fruitive worker aspires for a big fortune in the matter of wealth, women, meaning sense gratification, or worldly adoration. but those who are fixed in perfect reality are not at all interested in such false things. Yeah. Hitler, if he won the war, if he won World War II, he would have been deified. He was already deified in Germany. They were worshiping him. His picture was everywhere. And, you know, they thought he was God's gift to mankind. Not all Germans. Some Germans could see through him, but many Germans. And what did it lead to? Complete destruction of Germany. The death of millions of Germans, men and women and children. And they say that he actually got away. People claim that he committed suicide and his body was burned with his girlfriend or wife, Eva Braun. But actually, there's a lot of evidence that he got away in a submarine. It went from the Baltic Sea all the way to Argentina. And he lived till the 1970s with his wife. His wife outlived him. And there are testimonials of people who say they actually saw him. So, you see, there are many, if you look into history, you'll see there's a lot of lying that takes place in history. And there's usually the conquerors are the ones who write the history, not the defeated people. Or if the defeated people write the history, it's forgotten, you know, or de-emphasized. So anyway, the fruitive worker aspires for a big fortune in the matter of wealth, women, and worldly adoration, but those who are fixed in perfect reality are not at all interested in such false things. For them, it is all a waste of time. Well, to go deeper into this understanding, it's explained in depth in the Bhagavad Gita and in Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, verse 8, 9, and 10 are extremely important. So, Dharma svanstitak pumsa visvaksena katasu yad natpada yadi ratim shrama evahi kevalam. So this verse says, this is 1 to 8. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. In other words, those people who their whole life, they work hard, they make money, they have nice houses, nice cars, nice everything. They watch the Super Bowl with their baseball hat on backwards. They're drinking Budweiser beer and eating a hot dog. And they go do the barbecue on 4th of July, and they drink champagne on New Year's Eve, and so forth, right? And I don't want to explain the rest of what they do. It's all disgusting. That whole life is a waste of time. Not 1 second of that type of life has any value. So it says here that if a person doesn't get attraction for the message of Krishna, then everything that person has done in their life is a waste of time. It's useless. And Prabhupada says there are different occupational activities in terms of man's different conceptions of life. To the gross materialist who cannot see anything beyond the gross material body, there is nothing beyond the senses. Therefore, his occupational activities are limited to concentrated and extended selfishness. Concentrated selfishness centers around the personal body. This is generally seen amongst the lower animals. Extended selfishness is manifested in human society and centers around the family, society, community, nation, and world with a view to gross bodily comfort. Above these gross materialists are the mental speculators who hover aloft on the mental spheres, and their occupational duties involve making poetry and philosophy or propagating some ism with the same aim of selfishness, limited to the body and the mind. But above the body and mind is the dormant spirit soul, whose absence from the body makes the whole range of bodily and mental selfishness completely null and void. but less intelligent people have no information of the needs of the spirit soul. Because foolish people have no information of the soul and how it is beyond the purview of the body and mind, they are not satisfied in the performance of their occupational duties. The question of the satisfaction of self is raised herein. The self is beyond the gross body and subtle mind. He is the potent active principle of the body and mind. Without knowing the need of the dormant soul, one cannot be happy simply with emolument or decoration of the body and mind. The body and the mind are but superfluous outer coverings of the spirit soul. The spirit soul's needs must be fulfilled. Simply by cleansing this cage of the bird, one does not satisfy the bird. One must actually know the needs of the bird himself. The need of the spirit soul is that he wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desire for complete freedom. He wants to get itself. That's it. Swaraj. People want freedom. They don't want to be exploited, and they don't want to exploit. They want to be freed completely from birth, death, old age, and disease. And they want peace, happiness, love. They want eternal happiness, eternal peace, eternal love. They want to be free from this birth, death, old age, and disease. So he wants to get out of the covered walls of the greater universe. He wants to see the free light and the spirit. That complete freedom is achieved when he meets the complete spirit, the personality of Godhead. There is a dormant affection for God within everyone. Spiritual existence is manifested through the gross body and mind in the form of perverted affection for gross and subtle matter. Therefore, we have to engage ourselves in occupational engagements that will evoke our divine consciousness. This is possible only by hearing and chanting the divine activities of the Supreme Lord, and any occupational activity which does not help one to achieve attachment for hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead is said herein to be simply a waste of time. This is because other occupational duties, whatever ism they may belong to, cannot give liberation to the soul. Even the activities of the salvationists are considered to be useless because of their failure to pick up the fountainhead of all liberties, which means Krishna. The gross materialist can practically see that his material gain is limited only to time and space, either in this world or in the other. Even if he goes up to Swargaloka, he will find no permanent abode for his hankering soul. The hankering soul must be satisfied by the perfect scientific process of perfect devotional service. These are tremendous purports right in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? Then the next verse, Dharmasya apavargasya narto riteo pakalpate nartasya dharmakantikasya nakama lobaya hi smrita. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Now, this doesn't mean you can't have a business, you're not allowed to make money, you have to be poor. No. It means simply that you decide what is your minimum needs and you just stick to that. And whatever is beyond that, you use in the service of Krishna. So you can make $1 million a day like Jeff Bezos. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course, you don't want to severely exploit people. But anyway, let's say you're an honest businessman and you can make a lot of money. That's fine. As long as you use that excess money, and there's going to be excess because how many rotis can you eat? You're not going to eat 1,000 rotis a day because you can afford to buy 1,000 rotis. You can only eat 2 or 3 or 4 or maybe 6. That's it. So everything above that, all those rotis you have to donate to the temple or to help people become Krishna conscious. So in the purport to this verse, this is 10:9. So these 3 verses, 1, 2:8, 1:9, and 1:10. These three verses explain the whole idea of minimal material needs. Right? All occupational engagement. Okay, so it says, we have already discussed that pure devotional service to the Lord is automatically followed by perfect knowledge and detachment. Yes. From material existence. Yeah. But there are others who consider that all kinds of different occupational engagements, including those of religion, are meant for material gain. Yes. So we explained that yesterday. We explained it before. This prosperity theology, the blessings that you get in the Buddhist temple, and the promise of Jannat with 70 virgins, or heavenly gardens with rivers of wine and beautiful angelic women. You know, all these descriptions in Hinduism and Islam and Buddhism, and even, you know, Sikhism, Jainism, they all have these promises of tremendous sense gratification after you die. And so the general tendency of any ordinary man in any part of the world is to gain some material profit in exchange for religious or any other occupational service. Even in the Vedic literatures, for all sorts of religious performances, an allurement of material gain is offered, and most people are attracted by such allurements or blessings of religiosity. Yeah, so the Satyanarayana Puja, the Sudarsana Puja, and Sudarsana Chakra Puja, and all these different pujas, there's some material benefit. Even the Narayana Kavacha prayers, there's material benefit that's offered if you do it. Right? Is there a material benefit offered if you chant Hare Krishna? No. Does it say, well, you will be liberated from the cycle of birth and death? Well, that's the ultimate benefit, but it's not material, it's spiritual, right? There's no mundane sex in the spiritual world. So the mundaners not thinking that, you know, they're going to get beautiful girls, and it's not going to happen. You know, we're all servants of Krishna. It's not that we become Krishna, like the phony gurus and people promise. So, therefore, why are such so-called men of religion allured by material gain? Because material gain can enable one to fulfill desires, which in turn satisfy sense gratification. Yeah, so that is a description of all the false gurus in India today, and the false priests, and the false pastors, and the false mullahs, and the false this and the false that. Right? It says, Prabhupada says, why are such so-called men of religion allured by material gain? As soon as they become popular, they buy gold chains and gold rings and gold watches, and they have nice cars, and they're living in opulence, right? Why are they so-called men of religion allured by material gain? Because material gain can enable one to fulfill desires, which in turn satisfy sense gratification. This cycle of occupational engagements includes so-called religiosity followed by material gain, and material gain followed by fulfillment of desires. Sense gratification is the general way for all sorts of fully occupied men, but in the statement of Sutta Goswami, as per the verdict of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is nullified by the present sloka. One should not engage himself in any sort of occupational service for material gain only, nor should material gain be utilized for sense gratification. How material gain should be utilized is described as follows. Karma shinendriya pritir labo jivata yavata jivasya tattva jigyasa narto yascheha karma bihi. So this is the key verse. This is 1:9. 1.2.9. 1.2.10. Life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. So healthy life, because if you have a healthy life, you can do a lot of things, a lot of service for Krishna. And self-preservation. Yeah, you have to, and self-preservation, you have to understand, more people have died by overeating than by undereating. So therefore, one should control the eating, the sleeping, the mating, and the defending, based on Krishna conscious principles. And then in purport to this, and then we'll stop, the completely bewildered material civilization is wrongly directed toward the fulfillment of desires in sense gratification. In such civilization, in all spheres of life, the ultimate end is sense gratification. In politics, social service, altruism, philanthropy, and ultimately in religion or even in salvation, the very same tint of sense gratification is ever increasingly predominant. In the political field, the leaders of men fight with one another to fulfill their personal sense gratification. The voters adore the so-called leaders only when they promise sense gratification. As soon as the voters are dissatisfied in their own sense gratification, they dethrone the leaders. The leaders must always disappoint the voters by not satisfying their senses. The same is applicable in all other fields. No one is serious about the problems of life. Even those who are on the path of salvation desire to become one with the absolute truth and desire to commit spiritual suicide for sense gratification. That is, spiritual suicide is denying their own individuality in order to merge into the Brahman. But the Bhagavatam says that one should not live for sense gratification. One should satisfy the senses only in so much as required for self-preservation and not for sense gratification. So one should eat to live, not live to eat. There's a difference. People who live to eat, they're never satisfied eating. And those who eat to live are very frugal in their eating. They don't eat more than they need. Because the body is made of senses, which also require a certain amount of satisfaction, there are regulative directions for sense gratification of such senses, but the senses are not meant for unrestricted enjoyment. For example, marriage or the combination of a man with a woman is necessary for progeny, but is not meant for sense enjoyment. In the absence of voluntary restraint, there's propaganda for family planning. Yeah, taking contraceptives and abortion, all that nonsense. But foolish men do not know that family planning is automatically executed as soon as there is search for the absolute truth. Seekers of the absolute truth are never allured by unnecessary engagements in sense gratification, because the serious students seeking the absolute truth are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth. Always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth. In every sphere of life, therefore, the ultimate end must be seeking after the absolute truth, and that sort of engagement will make one happy, because he will be less engaged in varieties of sense gratification. And what that absolute truth is explained as follows. So these are three very important verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam to explain what it means to be satisfied with minimum. It doesn't mean that you walk around naked. It means that you can make as much money as you want, but it should not change your frugal lifestyle of eating modestly, sleeping modestly, dressing modestly, and not accumulating unnecessary things, so that you have time and energy for Krishna consciousness, as well as performing your duties as a grihasta, etc. So this is what you would call the minimalist ethos. That's a nice word. Look it up. ethos. Ethos. You'll see that word. I don't know how many times people read these words. They never look them up. Ethos.
The characteristic spirit of a culture, era, of a community as manifested in its beliefs and aspirations.
It's a great word, isn't it? Yeah. The culture, what does it say? Culture?
The characteristic spirit of a culture, era, or
Culture era. Culture era. See, that's what we're trying to do here. Create a culture era of Krishna consciousness. See, by understanding minimalist living and worshiping the deity and not working for sense gratification, working for pleasing Guru and Krishna, right? So that's cultural era. We're trying to create a cultural era. The era is a period of time. So in this period of time, living in Sammamish and coming to this temple, we want to create this culture, Vedic culture, practice of it. We want to preserve it and we want to grow it. We want to do both, preserve the Vedic culture and grow it. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We'll continue this subject tomorrow.
if we look at somebody like Warren Buffett,
Yes.
he's earned billions of dollars, but he led his life in the same house, same.
He has the same car that he bought in the 1950s. He's still driving the same car, right? Well, that's the image they're projecting. We don't really know what the truth is, right? I mean, it's probably true. All great men are, not all, but many great men are frugal in their lifestyle because they started very humbly, and they keep that humble, lifestyle, although they might be very, very rich. But Prabhupada, he only had a few things, right? But they were nice things, and he lived very simply. You see his bedroom in Mayapur, you can visit it. It's very, very simple, and it's a relatively small room. But if you look at the different gurus' living quarters, I mean, some of them are very frugal, but some of them are extremely lavish. And you compare that with Prabhupada's room while he was in Mayapur, it's very, very simple. It's not some big thing. It just has a simple wooden bed, and it's got his personal deity. Have you ever visited the Mayapur Prabhupada's room? Huh? No. Well, you can see pictures of it. Very simple. He was living there, and his personal things are on display. His plates and cups, and they're all. I think they were made out of stone, carved stone. Very simple, nothing complicated. And he, it's the way he lived. He had his little tiffin. Yeah. So he demonstrated his minimalist style of life as a genuine sannyasi. He lived for self-preservation in order to have maximal energy and time, health and energy and time for Krishna consciousness. And look at what he did in 11 years. In other words, he demonstrated tremendous energy for his age. In those 11 years, he went around the world 14 times and created this massive movement from nothing. Haribol. All glories to Prabhupada ki jai. Look that word up. Minimalist. Minimalist. What's it say?
person who advocates or practices minimalism in art or music, a person advocating minor or moderate reform or lifestyle.
Right.
So what's the journey of, let's say, somebody like, in terms of elevation of the progress of the soul? That's a Warren Buffett. He has led his life as a materialist somewhat.
Yeah.
But he led also in a very constrained, doesn't mean like according to Gita.
What?
He has not done, let's say, sense gratification purely, because he did still regulate his life and so on. So what is his journey?
Look, he's in the Ferris wheel syndrome. For all the charity he's done, he'll get good results. But because he's not a pure devotee, he's not going to go back to Godhead. He's just going up and down in the material world. That's all. That's what most people are doing, going up and down. Sometimes you're in Brahmaloka, sometimes you're in Patala. Until they give up the desire for sense gratification. He has sense gratification also. Right? So he's not as gross as some people, but he's not a pure devotee. No way. He could be, but he would have to have the association of pure devotees. So that's, you can look at Bill Gates, you can look at Warren Buffett. They're both very generous people in many ways. Of course, Buffett sort of disowned his daughter because he didn't like what she was doing. But anyway, he's been very charitable, and Gates also, and some others. They're very charitable. But what is their charity like? He works in his charity, right? What kind of charity do they do?
They're trying to do things with the education system.
Educational system, right?
Yeah.
Education and health, I think.
Yeah, just like farming and vaccines for various places.
Yeah, all mundane stuff.
And
No.
unfortunately, some of it seems to work like a religious practice. So they encourage you to donate your time and money in this cycle of involvement.
Right. But the involvement is usually mundane activities, right, based on the body.
Unfortunately, highly critical.
Yes.
They're very highly diversity.
Like the famous statement he just made, that he's going to stop eating meat and only eat laboratory-produced meat to reduce his carbon imprint. That's complete nonsense, right? As if that's going to change the world. Like I said, this whole thing about global warming is nonsense. There's no way humanity can change it, change whatever is happening, whether it's global warming or global cooling. And humanity cannot destroy the environment. They can only destroy things that they've created themselves. They can't destroy the world. They can't destroy the environment. They cannot control global warming or global cooling. All these things are controlled by Krishna through the demigods. They have this absolute false ego that thinks that they can actually change things. The only thing they can change is whatever they've created themselves. That's it. They're not going to be able to change what they have not created. So, but they sell this nonsense, the world's coming to an end, we have to do our part, you have to recycle.